Karl Brandt is one of the most famous German doctors of the 20th century, who became famous primarily for treating Adolf Hitler himself. However, this is not the most significant moment in his life. Brandt was not only an outstanding surgeon, but also a scientist who earned recognition in his field. Nevertheless, apart from these merits, his name will forever remain in history as one of the greatest criminals. Karl Franz Friedrich Brandt served as Reichskommissar of Health, was qualified as a surgeon, and became known as a war criminal. It was he who was tasked with carrying out the extermination of people, including the disabled, those with mental disorders, and those with other disabilities. These brutal crimes became part of the so-called euthanasia program, in which thousands of people died. How did an ordinary doctor, famous for his professional achievements, end up in the dock next to the most brutal criminals of the war? To understand this, it is worth studying the biography of Karl Brandt in more detail. That's what we're going to talk about today. Karl Brandt was born on January 8, 1904, in Mulhouse, the son of a military officer. There is little information about his childhood. It is only known that young Karl dreamed of following in his father's footsteps and linking his life with military service. However, these dreams were not destined to come true. When Brandt turned 14, Germany's defeat in World War I undermined his faith in power and destroyed the authority of the German army in his eyes. Karl began his education in Dresden and then entered the medical faculty of the University of Jena. Later, he continued his studies at the prestigious Ludwig Maximilian University of Munich. After completing his studies, Brandt moved to Berlin, where he studied medicine in depth. Even as a student, he became famous as a talented surgeon, successfully performing complex operations on the spine. These achievements brought him fame in the medical circles of the capital. In 1933, Karl Brandt joined the Stormtroopers, the paramilitary wing of the Nazi Party dedicated to suppressing political opponents. This step was an important turning point in his career. On March 17, 1934, Brandt married Anna Reborn, a famous swimming champion from Munich. In the same year, he continued to practice medicine and soon received an appointment that changed his life. Karl Brandt became Adolf Hitler's personal physician. Another well-known doctor, Werner Haase, who also treated the Führer, was appointed his deputy. In the same year, 1934, Brandt received the high rank of Lieutenant General of the Waffen-SS, strengthening his position in the elite of the Third Reich. In 1939, Karl Brandt, along with Reichsleiter and SS Obergruppenführer Philipp Bohler, was appointed commissioner for the implementation of the euthanasia program, a process aimed at killing terminally ill people. The program was named T4. It was Karl Brandt who gave the first permission for the murder of a disabled minor child, thereby launching the so-called euthanasia campaign. The purpose of this program was the systematic extermination of people with mental disorders, patients in psychiatric institutions, as well as children with any developmental disabilities. Special hospitals were selected for the campaign, where people with disabilities were killed by injections. In some cases, they were starved or killed in other ways. Almost 5,000 people became victims of the T4 action, whose lives were cut short under the pretext of mercy. In 1940, Karl Brandt joined the Waffen-SS, consolidating his position in the structure of the Nazi regime. 3 years later, in 1943, he was appointed Commissioner General for Health and Medical Services. In this position, Brandt was responsible for coordinating the civilian and military health systems. One of his key tasks was to create a so-called bed fund for wounded servicemen. However, the implementation of this program took on a terrifying character. To free up hospital beds for soldiers, Brandt authorized the killing of patients with mental disorders or physical malformations. This process has gone down in history as the Brandt Action. Brandt personally participated in the killing of patients by injecting them with lethal doses of drugs. Later, in order to save expensive medicines, it was decided to abandon injections. Instead, patients were starved or killed by beatings. Back in the 1920s, Adolf Hitler was haunted by the thought of the imperfection of the Aryan race. Having delved into the study of the principles of eugenics, the future dictator caught fire with the idea of cleansing the German people from the so-called pathological elements. These beliefs formed the basis of his ideology and subsequently became the cornerstone of the policy of the Third Reich. Karl Brandt became a key figure in the realization of these ideas. It was he who developed a project aimed at eliminating the shortcomings of the Aryan race, which meant getting rid of people with physical disabilities or mental disorders. In 1933, Brandt drafted a bill that provided for the forced termination of pregnancy and sterilization of women with physical disabilities, mental illnesses, or belonging to other nationalities. Over time, the circle of victims expanded to include women whom the authorities considered to be leading a frivolous lifestyle, as well as girls suffering from alcohol or drug addiction. The exact number of victims of this inhumane campaign is still unknown, which only underscores the scale of the tragedy. In 1944, Karl Brandt's career reached its peak. He was appointed Adolf Hitler's personal physician, as well as the Reich Commissioner for Health, Medical Services, Sanitation, and Hygiene. It seemed that his position in the elite of the Nazi regime guaranteed him immunity and protection from responsibility for the crimes committed. His proximity to the Führer made him virtually invulnerable, and Brandt's future looked bright. However, fate decreed otherwise, and justice began to take its toll. In the spring of 1945, when the Third Reich was already on the verge of collapse, all high-ranking figures received a categorical order to evacuate their families from areas that were soon to be occupied by American troops. Karl Brandt, despite his devotion to the regime, decided to disobey Hitler's will. He left his family, his wife and child, in Thuringia, in a risk zone. In the eyes of the Führer, such an act was tantamount to high treason, which was a turning point in Brandt's fate. Before Adolf Hitler's death, his personal physician, Karl Brandt, found himself at the center of a serious accusation. His family was suspected of passing classified information to the American troops. Hitler, convinced that Brandt had collaborated with the enemy throughout his service, sentenced him to death. The trial took place, the verdict was announced, but the execution was never carried out. In this, Karl Brandt was assisted by a high-ranking German military officer, Heinrich Himmler. After that, Brandt was captured by the Allies in Flensburg. The Nuremberg trials became an important milestone in the history of justice. It was an international trial organized by the anti-Hitler coalition to bring representatives of the Third Reich to justice. They were accused of preparing and carrying out crimes, including invasions of other countries during World War II. Karl Brandt turned out to be one of the key figures in the so-called Doctors' Trial, which took place within the framework of the Nuremberg tribunals from 1946 to 1947. The official name of the case is USA vs. Karl Brandt. During the trial, Brandt took an unexpected step. He refused the services of lawyers, deciding to defend himself on his own. He felt no guilt for his actions and was convinced of their correctness, which became an important part of his defense during the trial. At the Nuremberg trials, Karl Brandt faced the most serious charges. He was found particularly responsible for organizing and participating in numerous crimes, including the T4 program and other atrocities. The court issued a harsh verdict. Brandt was sentenced to death. The sentence was carried out on June 2, 1948, at Landsberg prison, where he was hanged. Before his death, Brandt remained adamant. He stated that he felt no shame going to execution, as he believed that he had served his state all his life. However, his last words were cut short. He did not have time to finish them, and the noose ended his life. In modern medicine, Karl Brandt is recognized as a talented surgeon whose abilities could benefit humanity. But in history, his name is associated with cruelty and inhumanity. Brandt had the potential to become an outstanding doctor, save lives, and help people. However, his beliefs and worldview, imbued with Nazi ideology, led him to a tragic end, to the gallows. Friends, that's what the video turned out to be. What do you think about this? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, put likes and write comments.